The apartment door slammed shut with a finality that shattered my world. Emilio didn't even turn around after I whispered the truth I'd been hiding. I'm gay, and I need to live openly now. I stood frozen in the middle of our Brooklyn apartment, the echo of his footsteps fading down the hallway like the last notes of a song I never wanted to end. 5 years of shared mornings, quiet evenings on this very couch, and secret weekends away where we could pretend the world didn't exist. All gone in the span of 10 frantic minutes. Leonardo Rossi, the guy everyone at the architecture firm saw as the rising star with the perfect life, suddenly felt like the emptiest version of himself. The rain tapped against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. I sank onto the couch, phone in hand, staring at the screen that showed no new messages from him. How had we gotten here? I replayed the conversation in my head, the way his face had drained of color when I finally said the words aloud after months of therapy sessions and sleepless nights. Emilio had always been the careful one, the planner who mapped out our future in careful steps. Leo, think about your promotion at the firm, he'd said earlier that evening, his voice tight with panic. My family in Chicago still thinks we're just roommates. If this gets out, everything we've built could crumble. I had reached for him then, trying to pull him close like I had so many times before, but he stepped back, eyes darting to the door. The argument escalated quickly, not with shouting, but with the quiet weight of fear. He packed a duffel bag with the efficiency of someone who'd been preparing for this moment in secret. Shirts, toiletries, the watch I'd given him for our anniversary. I love you, but I can't be the one standing beside you when the world turns against us, he said, his voice breaking just enough to make my chest ache. Then he was gone. The silence pressed in from all sides. I walked to the window and watched the street below, umbrellas bobbing like dark mushrooms in the downpour. Our life together had started so simply 3 years after we met at a gallery opening in Soho. Emilio, with his easy smile and those green eyes that lit up whenever he talked about his graphic design projects, had pulled me into conversation about a painting neither of us understood. We laughed, exchanged numbers, and within weeks we were inseparable in private. Publicly, we were careful, lunches with colleagues framed as friendly catch-ups, holidays spent separately with our families. I had convinced myself it was enough, that love in the shadows was still love. But after turning 27 last month, something inside me shifted. The hiding felt like chains I could no longer ignore. Therapy had helped me see that, had given me the courage to imagine a life where I didn't flinch every time someone asked if I was seeing anyone special. Now that courage had cost me everything. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. Emilio, please, we can figure this out together. Don't do this. My voice cracked on the last words. No response. I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Us at a rooftop party last summer, smiling for the camera while keeping a careful distance, our hands brushing just out of frame. The weight of it all settled heavy on my shoulders. Tomorrow I had to go back to the firm, face the team on the new museum project, pretend everything was fine. But how could I when the man I loved had chosen fear over us? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, replaying every moment where I could have spoken up sooner. My best friend Alex had always suspected, but even he didn't know the full story. At dawn, I texted him, "Need to talk. Something big happened." His reply came fast, "Doors open. Come over." Alex lived just a few blocks away in a sunlit walk-up filled with plants and art books. When I arrived, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, he didn't ask questions right away. He just pulled me into a hug and made fresh coffee. "Whatever it is, Leo, I'm here." Sitting on his couch, the words finally spilled out. "I came out to Emilio last night. Told him I want to live openly. Tell my family, stop hiding at work." He left. Alex listened without interrupting, his face steady. "Man, that's huge. I'm proud of you for saying it. Emilio, he'll come around or maybe he won't. But this is your life. His support felt like the first solid ground I'd touched in hours. We talked for hours about the fear that had kept me silent, about the Italian-American family traditions my parents still clung to in their Queens home. Sunday dinners, expectations of marriage and grandkids. "Your dad might surprise you," Alex said, though we both knew the odds weren't great. By afternoon, I felt a sliver of strength returning. I called my parents that evening, heart pounding. "Mom, Dad, I need to come over this weekend. There's something important I have to tell you." My mother's voice warmed immediately. "Of course, Caro. Is everything okay?" I lied and said yes, hanging up before the doubt could creep back in. The next days blurred into a routine of forced normalcy at the firm. I sketched building elevations for the museum project, attended meetings where colleagues joked about weekend dates, and smiled through it all. Inside, every notification on my phone sent my pulse racing, hoping it was Emilio. It never was. Whispers at the office started when I turned down an after-work drink with the team, citing personal stuff. One coworker, Mark, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The loneliness grew heavier with each passing hour. I walked the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, watching the city lights flicker on, wondering if coming out meant losing not just Emilio but the version of myself the world had accepted. Yet deep down, a quiet voice, the one therapy had helped me hear, whispered that this pain was the price of freedom. I just didn't know how high that price would climb. By the end of the week, I had packed away Emilio's remaining things into boxes, stacking them neatly by the door like a monument to what we'd lost. Alex stopped by with takeout, and we ate in silence for a while before he spoke. "You're already changing, Leo. I see it. Whatever happens with your family this weekend, remember you're not alone." His words stuck with me as I drove to Queens the next morning, the boxes still in my apartment like ghosts I couldn't quite bury. The family home smelled of sauce simmering on the stove, the same as always. My father greeted me with a firm handshake, my mother with a kiss on the cheek. We sat at the old oak table, and I took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad, I'm gay. I've been hiding it for years, but I can't anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. My mother's fork paused midair. My father's face tightened, the lines around his eyes deepening. No one spoke for what felt like minutes. Then my father cleared his throat. "Leonardo, this isn't what we raised you for." The disappointment in his voice cut deeper than any door slam. My mother reached for my hand, tears in her eyes, but the damage was done. I left that house feeling smaller than when I arrived, the weight of their expectations pressing down harder than ever. Back in Brooklyn, the empty apartment waited, and for the first time, I wondered if the journey ahead would break me completely. The drive back from Queens felt endless, streetlights blurring through the tears I refused to let fall. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, replaying my father's words until they echoed like a verdict I couldn't appeal. "This isn't what we raised you for." Those 8 syllables carried decades of Sunday masses, family gatherings where cousins asked when I'd settle down with a nice girl, and the unspoken rule that Rossi men provided, married, and continued the line. I pulled into my building's garage and sat in the dark for a long time, the engine ticking as it cooled. Emilio's absence hit harder in that moment, a hollow ache where his voice should have been offering reassurance. But he had chosen silence, and I had to face this alone. At the firm the following Monday, the routine offered a fragile distraction. I presented my latest revisions to the museum project, pointing out structural innovations that would make the building a landmark. My boss nodded approvingly, clapping me on the shoulder. "Solid work, Rossi. Keep this up and that promotion is yours." The praise should have lifted me, but it landed flat against the secret I now carried openly in my chest. During lunch, Mark from accounting lingered by my desk. "Heard you were dealing with some personal stuff. Everything good?" His tone was casual, but his eyes held a question I wasn't ready to answer. I shrugged it off with a smile. "Just family things." Later, alone in the conference room, I stared at my reflection in the glass wall. the same face that had smiled through years of careful lies. Coming out to Emilio and my parents had cracked the facade, but the world outside still demanded I wear it. Alex became my anchor in those early weeks. He dragged me to a quiet bar in Williamsburg one evening, the kind with dim lights and live jazz that didn't require small talk. Over beers, I poured out the details of the family dinner. Dad barely looked at me when I left. Mom called twice since, but it's all "how are you eating?" Like nothing changed. Alex listened, nodding. Give them time, man. Not everyone processes it the same day. My own folks took months, and they were supposed to be progressive. His story helped. He had come out in college, faced similar pushback, and emerged stronger. We talked late into the night about the small victories. The relief of not scanning every room for judgment, the way therapy sessions now felt like forward motion instead of circling the same fears. Still, nights alone in the apartment were the hardest. I'd catch myself reaching for the side of the bed where Emilio used to sleep, the sheets still carrying a faint trace of his cologne. Messages to him went unanswered, each one a quiet plea. "I miss you. Can we at least talk?" Work tension built subtly at first. A new client meeting required me to attend a networking event at a sleek Manhattan rooftop. Colleagues chatted about their wives and girlfriends, and when the conversation turned to me, I hesitated. No one special right now. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth felt too raw for that crowd. Later, Mark pulled me aside near the bar. "Look, if there's something going on, you can talk to me. I saw you looking distracted in the last meeting." His concern seemed genuine, but something in his tone made me pause. I brushed it off again, yet the seed of unease was planted. By week's end, rumors whispered through the office grapevine. Nothing direct, just sidelong glances and conversations that stopped when I entered the room. I threw myself into the project instead, staying late to refine drawings until my eyes burned. The architecture became my escape, lines and angles offering control where life gave none. Mid-month, my mother called again, her voice softer than before. "Your father is quiet, Leonardo. He sits in his chair after dinner and stares at the TV. Come to Sunday dinner. Please." I agreed, hoping for a bridge, but the meal was strained. Dad asked about work, avoided my eyes, and when I tried to bring up the conversation, he changed the subject to the neighbor's new car. Mom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent apology that didn't erase the gulf. Driving home, frustration boiled over. I pulled into a parking spot and dialed Emilio one more time. This time it rang. He answered on the third, voice guarded. "Leo, I can't. Not yet." The call ended before I could respond, leaving me staring at the phone in disbelief. The rejection stung fresh, compounding the family silence. Alex suggested a weekend hike in the Catskills to clear my head. We drove up early Saturday, the city giving way to rolling hills and crisp air. On the trail, surrounded by nothing but trees and sky, I finally voiced the deeper fear. What if coming out means I lose everyone who mattered? Alex stopped, turning to face me. Then you build new connections that fit the real you. It hurts like hell at first, but the freedom is worth it. We hiked in companionable silence after that, the physical effort mirroring the emotional work I was doing. Back in the city Sunday night, I felt a small shift. Not healed, but moving. The boxes of Emilio's things still sat by the door, a reminder I wasn't ready to discard. At the firm Monday, I noticed Mark avoiding eye contact more than usual. When I asked a shared colleague about it, she hesitated. He mentioned something about hearing you might be dealing with personal issues that could affect team dynamics. The words landed like a punch. Misunderstanding or deliberate? I didn't know, but the pressure mounted. I spent the evening sketching alone, pouring the turmoil into new designs that somehow captured the tension I felt. Strong foundations with fragile glass exteriors. Little by little, the man I was becoming started to take shape, even if the path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. The rumor at the firm spread like cracks in concrete. Subtle at first but impossible to ignore by the third week. Colleagues who once invited me to lunch now offered polite nods in the hallway. My boss pulled me into his office on a rainy Thursday. "Leo, everything okay? Mark mentioned some concerns about your focus on the museum project." I kept my voice steady. "Personal matters, sir. It's not affecting my work." He nodded, but the doubt lingered in his eyes. I returned to my desk, chest tight, and dove deeper into the blueprints. Architecture had always been my language, translating chaos into order, and now it became my shield. Yet every line I drew carried the echo of Emilio's departure and my father's silence. Alex noticed the change during our weekly coffee catch-up. "You look like you haven't slept." "Office stuff." I told him about the whispers. The way Mark's concern felt more like judgment. Alex frowned. "That sounds like classic avoidance. People get weird when they sense change. Don't let it derail you." His loyalty was a lifeline, the one relationship that hadn't fractured. We talked about my latest therapy session, where I'd unpacked the guilt of appending my parents' dreams. They wanted the traditional son, the one who brings home a daughter-in-law and fills the house with grandkids. Instead, they got me. Alex shared stories from his own circle, friends who'd faced similar workplace microaggressions after coming out. "It gets better when you stop performing for them," he said. His words stayed with me as I walked home through the bustling streets of Williamsburg, the city alive with people living their truths openly. I envied them their ease. Sunday dinner at my parents' house brought another layer of strain. Mom had made my favorite lasagna, but the table felt smaller somehow. Dad spoke in clipped sentences about the Mets game, avoiding any mention of our last conversation. Halfway through the meal, my cousin Maria called, her voice bright on speakerphone. "Uncle, when's Leo bringing someone special to the family reunion?" The question hung heavy. Dad's fork scraped the plate. "Leonardo has his own path." The words were neutral on the surface, but the undercurrent of disappointment cut deep. I left early, driving back to Brooklyn with the radio off, the quiet amplifying every unresolved feeling. That night, I finally unpacked one of Emilio's boxes, pulling out the faded concert t-shirt we'd bought together at a show in Central Park. Holding it, memories flooded back. His laugh during the encore, the way he'd leaned into me when no one was looking. The ache returned full force. I texted him again, "Still thinking about you. Whenever you're ready." No reply. The turning point at work came unexpectedly during a team brainstorming session. Mark presented an idea that echoed one I'd shared privately weeks earlier, but he claimed it as his own. When I pointed it out calmly, the room went still. "Leo, maybe you're misremembering," he said, eyes avoiding mine. The subtle betrayal stung, not because of the credit, but because it confirmed the shift in how I was perceived. After the meeting, a younger designer pulled me aside. "I heard some talk. If it's about who you are, ignore it. Your designs speak for themselves." Her quiet support surprised me, a small crack of light in the growing isolation. I stayed late that evening, refining my own proposal for the project lead role, channeling the frustration into sharper, bolder lines. The work felt honest in a way conversations no longer did. Alex organized a low-key gathering at his place the following weekend, just a few friends from his book club, no pressure to perform. For the first time since the door slammed, I felt seen without the weight of secrets. We discussed everything from city politics to favorite films, and when the topic of relationships arose, I shared a careful version of my story. No one flinched. One woman, a teacher named Sarah, nodded. Coming out is its own kind of architecture, building a life that stands on truth. Her words resonated, planting the seed of a new community I hadn't known I needed. Driving home under the Brooklyn lights, I realized the journey wasn't only about loss. Pieces were shifting into place, even if slowly. Mid-month brought a call from my mother that shifted the family dynamic again. "Your father asked about you today." He saw an article about that museum project and said your name. It was a tiny olive branch, but I clung to it. We arranged another dinner, this time with less tension in the air. Dad still didn't address the elephant in the room directly, but he asked detailed questions about my work, a silent acknowledgement of the man I was becoming. Emilio remained silent, his absence a constant shadow. I started volunteering at a local LGBT youth center on weekends, mentoring teens navigating their own identities. Listening to their stories mirrored my own struggles, reinforcing the decision I'd made. The work grounded me, turning pain into purpose. Yet the quiet evenings still carried questions. Would the people who'd walked away ever understand the strength it took to stay true? The city hummed on outside my window, indifferent and alive, while inside I rebuilt one careful layer at a time. The museum project deadline loomed like a storm cloud, pushing everyone at the firm into long hours and frayed tempers. I poured myself into the final renderings, staying past midnight most nights, the glow of my screen the only light in the empty office. The promotion I'd once chased now felt secondary to proving I could stand on my own. Mark's subtle sabotage attempts, misplaced files, delayed feedback, tested my patience, but I responded with quiet competence, letting the work speak. One afternoon, my boss called me in. "Rossi, the client loved your revisions. You're leading the presentation next week." The recognition landed like a small victory amid the personal chaos, a reminder that my identity didn't erase my talent. Family dinners evolved into cautious progress. My father began sharing stories from his own youth, working construction in Queens, building homes for families like ours. "Hard work doesn't care who you love, Leonardo," he said one evening, the closest he'd come to acceptance. Mom watched us both with hopeful eyes, serving seconds of tiramisu as if food could bridge the remaining gap. Their efforts meant more than words, yet the traditional expectations lingered. Questions about future holidays, subtle hints about settling down. I didn't push. Instead, I invited Alex to one dinner, his easy humor easing the tension. Dad even laughed at one of his jokes, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. The major shift arrived with a phone call I never expected. My father had suffered a mild heart scare during a routine checkup. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and worry as I sat beside Mom, her hand clutching mine. "He's stable, but the doctor says stress is a factor." She didn't say it, but we both knew the unspoken source, the strain from our conversation, the silent questions he'd carried. When Dad woke, he looked smaller in the hospital bed, tubes snaking across his chest. "Leonardo," he said, voice hoarse. "Come closer." I pulled the chair up, heart pounding. For the first time, he spoke directly. "I was scared for you. The world is hard. I didn't want that for my son." Tears stung my eyes as I gripped his hand. "I know, Dad, but hiding was harder." He nodded slowly, the conversation ending there, but the air between us felt lighter. The crisis forced us to confront what mattered, turning rejection into reluctant understanding. Emilio's message arrived the same week, unexpected and brief. "Heard about your dad. Hope he's okay. Can we meet?" I stared at the screen for hours before replying. "He's improving. Coffee this weekend." The meeting at a neutral cafe in Manhattan carried the weight of months apart. Emilio looked the same, fit, those green eyes guarded, but shadows lingered beneath them. I panicked, "Leo. My family, the job. I thought coming out would ruin everything." We talked for 2 hours, voices low over cooling lattes. He admitted his own fears had roots deeper than I'd known, a conservative upbringing that mirrored mine in painful ways. Yet listening to him, I felt the old pull mixed with new distance. The man who'd left me at my most vulnerable wasn't the same one sitting here now. We parted with a tentative promise to talk again, but I walked away unsettled, the misunderstanding of his departure still unresolved. Work presentation day arrived amid the family recovery. I stood before the client team in the sleek conference room, slides projecting my designs under bright lights. Mark watched from the back, expression neutral. My voice stayed steady as I outlined sustainable features and community impact, the months of inner work translating into confident delivery. Applause followed, and my boss pulled me aside afterward. That was masterful. Promotions official next month. The success tasted sweet, yet tempered by the personal crossroads. Alex celebrated with me over pizza that night, toasting to the real you. His friendship had never wavered, a constant through every rift relationship. The youth center volunteering deepened in meaning. One teen, a quiet boy named Jordan, reminded me of my younger self, hiding smiles, avoiding questions. I shared pieces of my story without details, emphasizing the strength in honesty. It doesn't fix everything overnight, but it lets you breathe. His nod carried hope I recognized. Back home, I sorted through the last of Emilio's boxes, keeping a few mementos and donating the rest. The apartment felt lighter, more mine. Yet Emilio's return attempt stirred old wounds. We met again midweek, this time for a walk in Central Park. He opened up about the betrayal he'd felt toward himself for leaving, the nights he'd regretted it. "I want to try again, Leo. If you'll have me." His words hung between us as joggers passed and leaves rustled. I wanted to say yes, but the scar from that slammed door still throbbed. "I need time. This isn't just about us anymore." The conversation ended without resolution, but the door between us cracked open slightly. As I watched him walk away, the city lights reflecting on the reservoir, I realized the journey had changed me. Decisions now came from strength, not desperation. The heart scare, the workplace whispers, the slow family thaw, all had forged something unbreakable. Still, the question of second chances lingered like the evening mist, waiting for its moment to resolve. Promotion celebrations at the firm were subdued but genuine. Colleagues raising glasses in the conference room, while the city skyline glittered outside the windows. I accepted the new title with quiet pride, the raise funding a small renovation to my apartment, fresh paint, new shelves for architecture books. The changes mirrored the internal ones, layers of old doubt stripped away. Mark approached me afterward, awkward but direct. "Congrats, Leo. I was out of line with the rumors. Personal stuff stays personal." His apology, though late, closed a chapter of workplace betrayal. I shook his hand, the gesture lighter than expected. Growth meant choosing forgiveness where it served me, not carrying grudges that weighed me down. Family Sundays transformed gradually. Dad recovered steadily, joining short walks around the block and even joking about taking it easy on the sauce. One evening, he pulled me aside in the backyard. "Your mother and I talked. We don't understand everything, but you're our son. That's what matters." The words, simple and imperfect, lifted a burden I'd carried since that first dinner. Mom hugged me tighter than usual, whispering, "Bring anyone special next time." No pressure. Their acceptance wasn't complete, but it was real. A bridge built on actions, not declarations. I invited Alex and Sarah from the youth center to the next gathering, the table filled with laughter and stories that crossed old divides. The traditional expectations softened into something more flexible, proving family could evolve. Emilio reached out more frequently, texts evolving into calls that stretched late into evenings. We met for dinner in a quiet Italian spot in Little Italy, the familiar cuisine stirring memories without overwhelming them. He shared the full story of his departure. The panic attacks he'd hidden, the pressure from his Chicago family that mirrored mine but with sharper edges. "I sacrificed us because I thought it would protect everything else. Turns out it broke the only thing worth keeping." His honesty revealed layers I'd never seen, the misunderstanding rooted in his own unspoken fears rather than rejection of me. Yet the betrayal still stung, the months of silence a gap we couldn't instantly close. I listened, asking questions that forced us both to confront consequences. "What changed now?" He met my gaze. Seeing you thrive without me showed what real strength looks like. I want to earn my place back, if you'll let me try. The offer carried weight, but I needed proof in actions, not words. The youth center hosted a community event that weekend, a panel on identity and resilience. I spoke briefly, sharing how coming out had reshaped my relationships and career. Jordan sat in the front row, nodding along. Afterward, several parents approached, grateful for the visibility. The experience reinforced my path, turning personal struggle into quiet advocacy. Alex joined as support, his presence a reminder of loyal bonds that endured. Over coffee later, he teased, "You're different, Leo. Stronger. Whatever you decide with Emilio, make sure it's for the right reasons." His counsel grounded me as I weighed the possibility of reconciliation. A major misunderstanding surfaced when Emilio mentioned a brief connection he'd formed during our separation. Nothing serious, he insisted, but a secret that had lingered unspoken. The revelation hit during a park walk, the truth spilling out amid falling leaves. It was a mistake born from loneliness. I ended it quickly. Anger flared hot and immediate, the betrayal reopening old wounds. "You left me to figure this out alone, then turned to someone else?" We argued on a bench, voices low but intense, the emotional consequences unfolding in real time. I walked away that evening, needing space to process. The incident forced a deeper look at trust. Could I rebuild it after such a fracture? Therapy helped unpack the layers, decisions crystallizing around self-respect first. I called Emilio days later. "I need full honesty moving forward. No more secrets." He agreed, voice steady with remorse. The conversation marked a pivot, sacrifice on both sides becoming the foundation for potential healing. Work brought new challenges, with the museum's groundbreaking approaching. I led site visits, coordinating with contractors under crisp autumn skies, the physical progress mirroring my internal one. Colleagues now sought my input openly, the earlier rifts mended through consistent effort. One evening, standing on the future plaza, I reflected on how far the journey had come. From slammed doors to leadership roles, from family silence to tentative warmth. Emilio's efforts showed in small ways. Surprise deliveries of my favorite coffee, attending a youth center fundraiser unasked. The romance we'd once shared flickered back to life during a quiet dinner, hands brushing across the table with new caution. Yet the climax of emotions built slowly, each decision carrying psychological weight. I sacrificed late nights at the office to prioritize these conversations, watching how presence rebuilt what absence had broken. The city continued its rhythm around us, indifferent to personal dramas but providing the backdrop for every step forward. Doubts remained, but so did hope, forged in the fire of misunderstanding and tempered by hard-won truth. The man I'd become no longer feared the consequences. He embraced them as proof of growth. The groundbreaking ceremony for the museum arrived on a bright October morning, the site buzzing with city officials, press, and the team I'd led through months of revisions. I stood at the podium in a crisp suit, microphone steady as I spoke about community, innovation, and the spaces where people could gather authentically. Cameras flashed, my boss beaming from the front row. The moment felt cinematic, the culmination of professional dedication intertwined with personal evolution. Alex and my parents attended, Dad clapping heartily beside Mom, their pride visible in ways words never could convey. Sarah and Jordan from the youth center waved from the crowd, symbols of the wider impact my journey had sparked. The event marked more than a building. It represented the foundation I'd rebuilt from rubble. Emilio waited afterward near the temporary fence, holding 2 coffees like a peace offering. We walked the perimeter together, the autumn sun warming the exposed earth. "You were incredible up there," he said, voice soft with genuine admiration. The weeks since our honest conversation had shown consistent effort. Canceled plans with old circles to prioritize time with me, attending family dinners where he navigated my father's questions with respect. The sacrifice felt mutual now. I'd opened my heart wider, risking vulnerability again. We sat on a nearby bench, the city skyline framing our conversation. I left because fear won that night, he admitted once more. But watching you stand here today, I see the man I fell in love with stronger, real. I want to stand beside him openly. His words carried the weight of proof, the turning point where past betrayal met present commitment. I took his hand, the touch familiar yet renewed. Then let's do this right. No more hiding. The decision settled deep, psychological scars fading under the light of shared resolve. Family integration followed naturally. We hosted a small dinner in my renovated apartment, Dad telling stories while Emilio helped in the kitchen, the easy rhythm surprising everyone. Mom pulled me aside later. He's good for you, Caro. And you're good for him. The acceptance, once a distant hope, now bloomed in quiet moments. Alex toasted us at the table, his loyal presence completing the circle. To second chances earned the hard way. Laughter filled the room. The rifts of misunderstanding healed through actions and time. At the youth center, Jordan approached me after a session. Seeing you and Emilio together gives me hope. The ripple effect of my growth extended beyond myself, reinforcing every decision along the way. Winter approached with new clarity. Emilio moved a few boxes back gradually, the apartment filling with shared life again. His sketches on the table, our coats hanging side by side. We attended events openly, hands linked without hesitation. The societal pressures that once loomed now manageable through mutual support. The emotional climax peaked during a quiet evening in Central Park, the same paths where we'd walked months earlier. Snow dusted the ground as we paused by the reservoir. I almost lost this forever, Emilio said, pulling me close. The embrace carried every trial. The slammed door, family struggles, workplace whispers, transformed into deeper connection. I kissed him then, the moment bright with possibility, the happiness earned through sacrifice and truth. Life continued its steady rhythm, the museum rising steadily as a testament to resilience. I led more projects, mentored at the center, and built a life where identity and love coexisted without compromise. The journey had taught me that acceptance starts within, rippling outward to reshape relationships and futures. Friends who had distanced themselves reached out occasionally, some mending ties, others fading naturally. The choices I'd made, facing secrets, demanding honesty, prioritizing growth, defined the man I was now. As spring buds appeared on the trees, I looked at Emilio across our kitchen table one morning, sunlight streaming in. The love we'd rebuilt felt stronger for the trials survived. Yet reflections lingered on the path taken, the people who'd left and returned, the family that adapted. In the end, the story proved that facing oneself fully could rewrite endings in unexpected ways. True or false? If someone leaves you at the moment you come out and need them most, they can never earn a second chance in your heart?